All right, Senator Pirtle, for your much anticipated daylight savings time bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for your time today, and thank you for being flexible with my schedule and Senator Gonzales' schedule over the last week or so. What I have before you is my biannual legislation to stop changing the clocks. This journey started my first session, I think, being new. We all get approached by different people to drop legislation, and so somebody asked me to drop permanent standard time, which I did, and I came to this very committee, and it died a very painful death. For many reasons brought up by Senator Gay Kernan, who was on the committee, basically just shredded it in front of everybody over the interwebs and learned a valuable lesson. And so after that, I was contacted by a young mother out of Albuquerque who mentioned to me that said, hey, we still want to stop changing the clock, but since there's so many issues with the economy and everything going on with permanent standard time, how do we find a way to go to permanent daylight? And so in doing that, was able to get it through the Senate, through the House, to the floor. Unfortunately, the committee report just never showed up. It got lost somewhere in this building. But the support of that has just grown exponentially every year. I know many of the members of this committee have supported it in the past, but since then, Mr. Chair and members of the 26 states have passed something. We were the first state to get it through one chamber and almost could have been leading the way on this issue, but since then 26 states have passed this legislation, and only 2 states, since this was allowed under federal law back in, I believe, the 60s, have chosen standard time year-round. And I think that's an interesting thing to point out. And a lot of it, I think, Mr. Chair and members of the committee, is the confusion and the problems with going to standard time. And on the flip side of that, overwhelmingly, my emails are full of people that love the extra hour of daylight in the evening. There's plenty of reasons why. Just to name a few, lower crime, extra time with family, more time to golf, more time to shop downtown, more time to ski, more daylight to ski. And so I think there's tons of benefits of permanent daylight saving time, along with the fact that the federal government would have to make action, so that way there would be consistency, national consistency with regard to time. There wouldn't be these time zones where 8 months out of the year were the same as California and 4 months out of the year were the same time as Texas, and all of this confusion. This would require federal action, other states to get involved, and so that there would be consistency and consistent time across the country. And with that, Mr. Chair, I'll stand for questions.
It would require federal action?
It would require federal action. And one change, one change that was made, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, was when then House Chairman Senator Maestas had me as a guest down in Deming, and we worked out some issues with regard to Juarez and Santa Teresa with the commerce that goes. So there would need to be a trigger in order for ours to take action, that there would be consistency with Texas, so that we wouldn't lose the commerce and interrupt what we have, the real strong economic driver that we have down in Santa Teresa. So just taking into those valid concerns, worked that into the bill, and I think as more states move forward, we will see Texas coming along. I will point out that Colorado actually passed something that said if enough of the states passed a compact saying we're going to daylight saving time, they were just going to do it without federal approval. So I think it's kind of funny how some states have taken some different approaches. Of course, Colorado, the first state to legalize cannabis, has kind of figured out some of the federal law. It's only a suggestion, but I don't think we need to go that far. This would be something that is, to be frank with everybody, it's kind of a memorial in legislation, but it's something that's going to send a message to the federal government that we're tired of it, we're ready to stop changing time, and the vast majority of people enjoy that hour of daylight in the evening as opposed to in the morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee.
Okay. Anybody in the audience in support of this bill? Anybody in the audience opposed to this bill? We do have 2 online who are opposed. One is Jay Pea. We'll start with you, Jay.
Yes, I'm unmuted now. I don't see a video. Is that correct?
Yeah, I don't think we have video capacity right now.
Okay, very well. Hello, Mr. Chair, committee members. Thank you very much for letting me speak today. My name is Jay Pea, and I am the president of the nonprofit Save Standard Time, and I'm calling in over from the neighboring state of Arizona. I'm asking opposition to the Honorable Senator Pirtle's Bill 287 and asking support instead for the Honorable Senator Gonzales's Bill 191. We agree that ending the clock change is a good idea, but we warn that permanent daylight time is actually worse than clock change. It forces early waking in an effort to increase evening spending at the cost of health, safety, education, the economy, energy usage. It's not a good idea. Permanent standard time is the real clock defined from the natural world where the sun is actually positioned in the sky. It's the honest time of day. And it turns out it's actually best for public health, safety, and education. This is the opinion of the American Medical Association, the American Academy of Neurology, the American College of Chest Physicians, the National Safety Council, the American Academy of Sleep Medicine, the National PTA, writers from Bloomberg, the Oregonian, the Star Tribune, Cato Institute, Daily Wire. There really is broad bipartisan opposition to the policy of Bill 287 and support for the policy of Bill 191. I want to address a few things that were said that regrettably were incorrect. There are not 26 states that have passed this same legislation. That would be only 16 states. I don't know where the extra 10 come from, but it's an honest mistake, I'm sure. 16 states have passed this bill, but it is forbidden by federal law, and for good reason. The last time we attempted it in 1974, it actually cost people's lives. Because again, it would be forcing people to wake up an hour early all of winter and to go to school or work before sunrise. And I think if you were to ask your constituents, would they like to set their alarm clock an hour early? Would they like to go to school or work in the dark all of winter? They would probably say no, but that's what this policy would force them to do. The nation of Mexico just a few months ago decided to get rid of daylight time, not make it permanent. Arizona is on permanent standard time, not daylight time. Also Hawaii, the 5 U.S. territories, and most nations on Earth. The Navajo Nation is waiting on your state to make this change to standard time. There are border towns in Mexico that want to follow you into making the change to standard time, not permanent daylight time. Texas, Oklahoma, Montana, there are many states that are considering bills for standard time, which is federally pre-approved. There was also a mention on Friday of crime and exercise and energy usage, and regrettably, there's been 1 or 2 studies that look at only the date of the clock change, showing a temporary reduction in crime. But when you zoom out at the rest of the year, it actually shows that long-term daylight time is increasing crime. It has no effect on the amount of exercise. It just changes when people exercise. And it does not save, daylight time does not save energy. Daylight time is forcing us to wake up early, keeps us awake late at night, which means we're consuming more heat in the morning and consuming more air conditioning in the evening. And that's a big reason why Arizona has not done daylight time since 1968. So in conclusion, I would ask that the Health Committee would listen to the broad consensus of dozens of nonprofits for health, safety, and education, oppose Bill 287 for daylight time, and instead support Bill 191 for standard time. And I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have. Thanks again for letting me speak.
Thank you very much, Jay. Next is Jeff Gentry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I assume everyone can hear me all right?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, can I confirm? Good, thank you so much. Mr. Chairman, Senators, I was a witness for Senator Gonzales on Friday, so I would urge those who maybe didn't get to hear that to review it. I'm back in Portales and have 3 notes for the committee on SB 287. Those who actually study this issue support permanent standard time. as Mr. P indicated, and I would associate myself with all of his remarks. But my 3 points are this. One, the harmful effects of daylight saving time are not temporary, not just during the spring transition, but for 2/3 of the year. Artificial time produces chronic circadian misalignment with measurably higher rates of heart disease, stroke, obesity, dementia, cancer, and our study found road fatalities. The established research in chronobiology indicates that SB 287 would be harmful to the health and safety of New Mexicans. Again, I say the people who have actually studied this issue support permanent standard time. Second, during DST, New Mexico clocks say noon when the sun is above New Orleans. That's a full time zone and 750 miles in the wrong. And I would refer to Mr. P's notes about all of the medical associations who agree that standard time is superior. And finally, daylight saving time was drawn up more than a half century ago by bureaucrats who had no understanding of circadian science. We are the guinea pigs in this failed experiment. Yes, I agree with Senator Pirtle that we should end clock change, but we need to do it the right way. Please do not just compromise on the two bills by doing nothing. New Mexico should reject daylight saving time in favor of permanent standard time. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Gentry. Did you want to respond?
Mr. Chair, just on a few things. You know, all those medical reports, they are valid. There's more heart attacks, there are sleep issues, there are car accidents, but it's because of the change forward into daylight saving time. If we stick with it, those go away, those stop. So I think there's a little bit of, you know, we see it all the time in our jobs as legislators. You can tweak anything to make it say what you want. But then with regard to Mexico, the states that border the United States, they're actually following what we do, because Mexico values what we do and the relationship we have together with economy. So yes, part of Mexico has stopped changing the clocks, but northern Mexico, the states that border the United States, are actually still status quo, whatever we're doing, because it's important to have that. Which I think if we went to permanent daylight saving time as a nation, which is essentially what this would do, we wouldn't just break off on our own, then they would keep up with that. And not to mention, they're closer to the equator, so they have more of a 12-hour day anyway. And then I would, with regard to going to school in the dark, I think it was 2 sessions ago, my dad's cousin, well, my cousin too, he called me and he said, man, this argument of kids going to school in the dark is so ridiculous. I lived in Michigan. We went to school in the dark, we got home in the dark, and we did just fine. And so I found it kind of funny that he called me, because they're so far north, that notion is just, we live in our little fishbowl, that we don't realize what other states go through, that we'll find a way, we'll be safe, we'll work through it and adapt, because that's what humans do. I will mention, though, with regard to the Navajo Nation, this is time, I'm kind of a time nerd, know more about it than I would ever have hoped, that the Hopis, which is kind of like the donut hole within a donut of the Navajo Nation, they are actually with New Mexico. So where you have part of the Navajo Nation sticks with Arizona, the Hopis stick with us, even though they're way further into Arizona and actually surrounded by the Navajo Nation. So I think it's kind of interesting when some of those things are brought out, that it's half-truths. But I do appreciate it. I will agree wholeheartedly. The changing of the time is a serious health issue. It really disrupts children and their sleep patterns, and especially our children with special needs. And so that's actually the reason why that young mother from Albuquerque brought this forward.
Very good. Okay, members of the committee. Questions, discussion. Senator Maestas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator Pirtle, for bringing it forward and for listening to folks, for changing the bill year after year, and for having like a clean bill that would smoothly make it happen. Then State Representative Gonzales passed a bill through the House for standard time, and I think that bill had like one dissenting vote, 1 or 2. And then of course the Senate passed the bill for daylight savings time, and now it's proposed by 2 senators. And then of course the bill that was referred to, Mr. Chairman, Senator Pirtle's bill a couple years back got to House Commerce. And the folks down at the Border Authority were panicked out because they thought the change would happen overnight and it would create this havoc on the border. Because as you know, Mr. Chairman, New Mexico, El Paso County, and Chihuahua, the state just below El Paso and Sunland Park, have to be on the same time for that commerce to work, or to work better, rather. So what this would do is, so the gentleman that was on that just spoke on Zoom that was here the other day, he misspoke, Mr. Chairman. Mexico, besides the border states, went to a single time. But the Mexican government has allowed the border states to adapt to their northern neighbors. So Chihuahua is the same. Chihuahua changes its time when New Mexico and El Paso County change theirs. And so what this would do, correct me if I'm wrong, would this change New Mexico's, if once the gov signs this, 90 days later, would it change New Mexico's time? And then New Mexico would be different than El Paso County and Chihuahua, or how would it work?
So, Mr. Chair and Senator, how this would work is essentially the governor would sign this, and it would just lay in waiting for the federal government. And then it would not even take effect if the federal government said, hey, you can go to daylight saving time if you want to, because the other trigger is El Paso County or the state of Texas as a whole would have to then say both time zones within their state are then permanent daylight saving time. So there's some triggers to protect that and ensure that we don't disrupt that commerce, because that is important. And I will note, Mr. Chair, they're not here to speak against it, so I'm assuming they are either neutral or not, at least not opposed to it anymore. But that's it takes some triggers, and it would require federal action. This has passed the U.S. Senate. It's waiting in the United States House of Representatives.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Pirtle, obviously I can't speak for the Mexican government, but I could practically guarantee, Mr. Chairman, that the second, when it's going to, the second New Mexico and El Paso County change, obviously there'll be a lead time. Then the Mexican government will then allow or force Chihuahua to change its time, so that all three states would be the same time. That's kind of the plan, correct?
And Mr. Chair and Senator, that's absolutely correct. And I think we can assume, because the Mexican government has already said northern states do what you need to stay connected with your northern neighbors, that they would continue to do that.
And that's, Mr. Chairman, Senator Pirtle, that's the logical conclusion with regards to that. And so we did, in the interim, we had a great hearing down in Deming, kind of fleshed out some of these issues. And the Border Authority folks are still a little panicked, but they're not as panicked out as they were a couple years ago. And then standard time may work like in Canada, northern latitudes, but I think in the southern states, so I think we're 35 latitude. I think daylight savings time is the way to go. And then you ask yourself, well, what about Arizona? They're the same latitude as us. It's kind of hot in Arizona. Like, they want the sun to go down. They cannot wait for the sun to go down in Arizona, unless you're like on 16 and you're like having the game of your life. But so it's a different reality. We want more daylight. More daylight. The studies that I've read show that that there's less crime with more daylight in the evening. There's more time with spending time with your kids before you have to read and send them to bed or whatnot. Currently, we have daylight savings time 8 months out of the year, and just when the sun is going down earlier and earlier, like 5:45, 5:30, then boom, it jumps, and it's like you get home and it's dark. So and lastly, Mr. Chairman, Senator Pirtle, nothing prohibits a school district from tweaking its time. You could change your start times. We don't have to change the entire clock of the state. Folks can adjust if they so choose, but for New Mexico's reality, I submit that daylight savings time is the way to go.
Okay, so we have Senator Tallman, Senator Cedillo Lopez, and Senator Hickey.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for bringing this bill forward. In America, we can't even agree on what time it is. So the Uniform Time Act was passed in 1966, so that's 57 years ago. We've been arguing about this for 57 years, basically.
And Mr. Chair and Senator, we've argued over it. The year-long daylight saving time didn't even go into effect. They did it and then pulled it back before it even took effect. And then I believe it was President George W. Bush. Yeah, he was the most recent. George W. Bush is the one that went from a 6-6 split to an 8-4 split. 8 months on daylight saving and 4 on standard. And so that's kind of a quick history of our recent as a country as to daylight saving time and the changing.
So I was out of the room for a while. Maybe you answered this question. How many states have,
16.
16 states have?
Well, and Mr. Chair, if I may, 16 that have passed this, there's 26 states that have passed some type of form of this, not this exact verbiage. But for example, state of California passed it in their constitution through referendum that daylight saving time is what they want. So they were actually able to go to their people, and the people of California chose permanent daylight saving time.
So just to follow up on that point you just made, since California is on permanent daylight savings?
They're not, because it's not allowed federally, but as soon as it is allowed federally, they will too. But my expert, who was not able to be on today, Mr. Yates, who I've worked with for years, and he's became quite the expert on this, told me it was 26 states.
Go ahead.
So, thank you. Just 2 more quick questions. I don't want to drag this out. So,
We have time, Senator.
well, you may have time, but I don't know if I do. So, am I an oddball? I don't, the days that change, it's just another day for me. It doesn't affect me. But it really affects people?
And Mr. Chair and Senator, I can tell you, I'm one of the, I think it's something like 15 or 20% of the people who are maybe a little more photosensitive. I mean, for me, you change it 1 hour, I'm waking up at 3 in the morning, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, ready to go. And all we did was change 1 hour. It takes me a little bit more time to adapt, but eventually, as humans do, we do adapt. But it's less of the inconvenience, and really what it boils down to is the simple question: would you rather have that hour of daylight in the morning when it's cold in the winter, or would you rather have it in the evening whenever it's usually even a little warmer? Even in our winters, this weekend we're going to have 70 degrees. It would be nice if we had another hour to play golf or ski or have soccer practice.
Yes, so Mr. Chair, it depends on where you live. That's why we can't get an agreement, because not everybody's in the same situation. So, well, maybe you're a big-time farmer and rancher, so maybe you have a propensity to wake up early, because farmers wake up early.
And Mr. Chair and Senator, the clock has no bearing over my life. I don't allow something to control me that much. It's sun up to sundown where I come from.
Okay. Well, I don't have a hard opinion one way or the other. Unfortunately, I vote one of the last people to vote, so I'm going to go with, if it looks like it's going to be a yes, I'll go with a yes. If it looks like it's going to be a no, I'll go with a no. So that's all I have.
Senator Cedillo Lopez.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This has been such a crazy issue for me, but the common thing that I get from my constituents is stop the change. And I have constituents who've written articles about it. And by the way, I don't know if Jeff Gentry and Mr. Pea are still on. I hope they will be experts for me as I present Senator Gonzales's bill. Hint, hint, if they're still on. I'm presenting Senator Gonzales's bill for him, but what I have finally told my constituents is I will vote for anything that will stop the change. The thing about Senator Gonzales's bill that will be presented is it'll stop it immediately. This one, we have to wait for federal action. Now, I'm going to vote for this one, but I'm also going to present Senator Gonzales's bill and also going to vote for that one because we need to stop the change. That change has resulted in car accidents and health problems. It's just been a disaster. And so that's what I support is stopping the change. And like I said, I think at my first year here, I voted for it in committee with a lot of enthusiasm, and then I got so much, I had an article that was written by somebody in my district who sent the article to me and convinced me to vote against it on the floor. I've now come to, I will vote for anything that'll simply stop the change. So I'm supporting your bill, Mr. Chair, Senator, but I am sort of lean towards Senator Gonzales's because it'll stop it sooner. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Hickey and then Senator McKenna.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Senator Pirtle, for bringing this bill forward. I don't think we can do either one until we get a federal bill, right?
We can do,
No,
we can do ours.
Mr. Chair and Senator, you are allowed under federal law now to exempt yourself to standard time.
Okay.
And so that's been the case for, what was the math? 57 years, and only 2 states have done it, and they did it right away.
Okay, thank you for that. The other, one of the experts, Mr. Chairman and Senator Pirtle, really seemed to make a compelling argument that you should go for standard time medically. And I never really studied this medically until I came to the Senate, and I was like, what? And I know there are definitely medical issues associated with the change, but if we had another expert on, would they be able, who was in favor of daylight savings time, would they make as compelling a medical argument?
And Mr. Chair and Senator, the interesting thing is the cherry picking of data. So in the cherry picking of data, it's not daylight saving time that is causing the health emergency or the health problems. It's the changing of the clock to that time that is causing it. So I think it's a little cherry pick to say, well, what the Heart Association said was changing to daylight saving time does cause an increase in heart attacks. But if we stay there and don't change ever again, well, then that issue goes away.
Okay, thank you for that answer. I'm just wondering if if you're able to do more caths in standard time, catheterizations of the heart, then yeah, I'm sorry, it's my cynicism. That the Cardiology Association would go one way or the other. There's often an economic reason for a lot of things in healthcare. Last question. Last question is, so is Congress Congress prefers the daylight savings, because that's what the polls say and everything. Am I correct in that?
And Mr. Chair and Senator, overwhelmingly so. We're talking 3 out of 4 people want daylight saving time.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Senator McKenna.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Senator Pirtle, for bringing this bill to us again. You had my support last year. I, too, cannot stand the change. So many of my constituents, family members, friends cannot stand the change. But with that said, I have been looking around, researching what the medical community has been saying about the two, which one is best. And I'm looking at, this latest one is from the Society for Research on Biological Rhythms. And this group is saying, based on comparisons of large populations living in DST or standard time, or on Western versus Eastern time, the advantages of permanent standard time outweigh switching to DST annually or permanently. And so with that in mind, and because we've got a bill right after yours, I'm going to vote for that one, but I absolutely applaud you for bringing this up again. Just the health concerns, the reduction of accidents on the job and in our vehicles, to me, it's just what we need to do. And what was I also trying to say? Oh, and then I didn't realize with the other bill, we can enact it as soon as the governor signs it, and that is such a huge plus for us too. So thank you, Senator Pirtle. Thank you, Chairman.
Senator Gallegos.
Mr. Chair and Senator, thank you. I missed part of the presentation, but just to be forward, I know the time doesn't matter to me, but for my health, my wife would like your bill to pass. If you remember, even when I was in the House, I used to put this on the desk, take a picture of it the last day of session, and I just Facebook it out, ran out of time. But in reality, Mr. Chair and Senator, I know we've heard this bill for both bills for a long time, but in my area of the state, they would prefer the daylight savings. So for that reason, I'll vote in favor of your bill. I'd love to hear, I'd already heard Senator Gonzales on it before, but I I would like to be able to, that we'll be able to hear both of them back to back, so that way we can hear the differences, but I appreciate it, and I will be standing in support. Mr. Chair, thank you.
Anybody else? What's the will of the committee?
We do pass.
I'll second.
Seconded, okay. Now,
Let him say.
let me just get into some discussion here. What happens if we pass both of these bills?
So,
How can we be on standard time permanently and daylight savings time permanently?
so, Mr. Chair, it's that 103rd vote, 13th vote that we all, you know, kind of hold our breath on once we do all the legwork to get a bill to the governor. You know, I will say, just in response to some of the issues, I didn't want to come here and debate standard time. But with some of the issues on why we have the El Paso County, and we've taken into account some of these issues, the amount of disarray or chaos that standard time would cause, we'd be 2 hours behind Texas 8 months out of the year, which is half of our border. That's a huge part of our economy. El Paso County would be a different time than us 8 months out of the year, including Chihuahua. The state of Chihuahua would have to pick, do we want to be with El Paso County? Do we want to be with New Mexico? And so implementing that right away would cause that chaos and the disruption to the economy, where this would allow for some consistency nationwide. But if both bills did pass, it would then be the 113th vote is what would matter.
Senator Maestas?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Senator Pirtle, I misspoke earlier. The bill that was sponsored by then Representative Bobby Gonzales did not have overwhelming support. It barely passed 35-32.
And Mr. Chair and Senators, I will tell you there were quite a few of the members of the House that were confused. They thought it was permanent daylight. They thought it was just a mirror of my bill that voted yes.
The yes votes thought that.
Now, the one dilemma, of course, is if we pass your bill and the governor signs your version of this, nothing changes. We still have the change every fall and every spring until the Congress acts.
Which, Mr. Chair and members of the committee, for the last 10 years, all I've heard is that we don't want to change right away because other states don't change. And so I've been trying to mold this into what I suppose was the will of the legislature. And so that's why I have what I have before you.
You've been able to determine that the legislature's will is pretty flexible on this.
Kind of like an amoeba, kind of like our defense, Mr. Chair, in the basketball
game. Just like our defense, that's right. Okay. Secretary will call the roll. Yeah, we got a second. Who gave the second? Gallegos, Senator Gallegos.
Senator Gallegos.
Yes, ma'am.
Senator Hickey.
Yes.
Senator Engel. Yes. Senator Maestas.
Yes.
Senator McKenna.
No.
Senator Schmiedes. Senator Cedillo Lopez.
Yes.
Senator Tallman.
Yes.
Senator Tizipino.
No.
62 and 1
So by a 6-2 vote, you have a due pass.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. And
You want to do your other bill?
which one?
The other bill you have with us today is expanding the definition of cremation.
I think, Mr. Chair, if it's okay with the committee, there's kind of a crew that wanted to be here on that one.
Okay, we'll pass over it.
But I will say, maybe if I can get this daylight saving bill through, I can retire. So there's some incentive for you.
There's an incentive. Now we'll go back to Senator Gonzales's bill, and Senator Cedillo Lopez will carry it. We heard all the testimony on it. Did you want to add anything, Senator?
No, I think I just really want to emphasize the point that if we did this now, we could stop the change immediately. And I will ask if they're online, Jeff Gentry and Mr. P, to be available for experts for me since I'm carrying it for Senator Gonzales, who's been carrying it for a lot longer. And like I said, I support both of them, but this one has the advantage of stopping the change immediately, and I do think that the border will adjust, and perhaps it'll move Texas to do something as well.
Okay, did you want to say anything, Mr. P, about this bill? Is he still there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you. I wanted to say that it is the dozens of medical groups that I listed. They are not opposing simply clock change, but they are opposing permanent daylight time and endorsing permanent standard time. So again, the American Medical Association, the American Academy of Neurology, National Safety Council, literally dozens of nonprofits representing thousands of scientists and medical professionals are urging you, please do not pass permanent daylight time, and please do pass permanent standard time. There was also a statement about Mexican states following the U.S., and that is not true. It is a few Mexican cities on the border that are following the U.S. The greater areas of the states are, each state in Mexico is on their correct permanent standard time now. The statement as to school in the dark, with the current system where we have standard time in the winter, that's because if you have daylight time in the winter, the sun wouldn't come up until 8:30. And I don't think most people want to go to school or work before the sunrise. So we need standard time to keep the sunrise before 8 o'clock in the morning for everyone's health and safety. The Hopi Nation is on permanent standard time, not permanent daylight time, as was said earlier by Senator Pirtle. And we do not adjust. We've tried this before. We tried it in the 40s here in the US, and people hated it. We tried it in the 1970s, and it actually cost children's lives. The UK tried it for 3 years and undid it. Russia tried it for 3 years and undid it. They have hard evidence showing that it increases depression, permanent daylight time, increases depression and car accidents, whereas permanent standard time improves mental health, improves roadway safety. And again, it is not 16 bills, 16 states that have passed this, that have passed permanent daylight time. It is not 26, as was said, it was only 16. California was named, and that is not correct. California voted to end clock change and to choose 1 clock later. And then California debated, should it be permanent daylight time, and voted no. And then debated it the next year, should it be permanent daylight time, are we sure? And again voted no. So California is not a permanent daylight state. So again, please, I would urge you as the Health Committee to support permanent standard time and to reconsider your support of permanent daylight time. Thanks again very much.
Thank you. Then we have Mr. Gentry. Is he still there? Did you want to say something about this bill?
Yes, sir. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator Cedillo Lopez. The things that I would want to emphasize are that I agree completely with Senator Cedillo Lopez in that stopping clock change is very valuable. And we can do it this year if we do it to standard time. But remember that it needs to be done the right way. And I'm afraid that some of the opposition to Senator Gonzales' bill does not account for the substantial health and safety effects, as the senator mentioned just moments ago. And that is substantially higher rates, measurably higher rates of heart disease, stroke, obesity, dementia, cancer, and road fatalities. Our ENMU study is the one that found that standard time, natural time, as opposed to artificial time, as imposed by DST, that DST raises the level nationally in every place that is in an artificial time zone by 22%. And this was recently published in an international journal. And I would just say one other thing. I'm a reluctant witness because I'm a long distance runner, and I can't run in the morning. My body doesn't respond. So evening running would be a great advantage for me in terms of my running, but I understand the science of human, well, we call it circadian science or chronobiology. And it's very clear that if we care about the health and safety, and as Mr. P said, education as well, that we're going to endorse permanent standard time. It's just those who have looked at this issue closely, rather than simply golfers and people who would personally enjoy more evening light, it's clear that our health and safety would be far better served with permanent standard time. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Gentry. Okay, members of the committee. We heard all the facts, all the information, sifted all, and you move a do pass.
Do pass.
Is there?
Take action to bring it off the table, it's a temporary table.
It was just, we didn't take any, we just said we'll hold it and come back.
Thank you, sorry.
I'll second that. Okay, what's the will? Anybody have any discussion of it? Are we exhausted this issue?
Mr. Chair.
Secretary, we call the roll.
Mr. Chair, just.
Yeah, did you want to wrap it up?
I need to apologize deeply to my constituent who sent me the study that he did on circadian rhythms. I don't remember his name, but he did give to me. He's a researcher at UNM who said that it was really important to the body to correlate most closely to sunrise and sunset, and that daylight savings time did it. And I apologize. I just don't remember his name, and I don't have his study, but I did appreciate the provision of the information.
Okay. Secretary, will call the roll. Oh,
Senator Hickey.
did you have a comment, Senator?
Yes, one last comment. And that has to do with the science, Mr. Chairman and Senator. I'm just having a hard time with the firmness of the standard time. There are so many other things that how we move with the earth and rhythms and so forth. I mean, literally the poles and the polar fields, and there's a new book out about how animals communicate and so on, and the forces that work with them, vibrations in the earth. And I just think that there's so much more that we need to understand about how these influences impact our propensity for depression or what have you. And I think the most compelling feature is, and so I'm going to vote no, the most compelling feature is that this is what the American people want to do. So I just wanted to be able to make that comment before I cast my vote.
And I would comment that, to me, the issue is, can we do it? And we can't do daylight savings time.
But we can do this.
We can do this. And that would stop the change, which seems to be the crux of the issue, but we'll see.
Mr. Chair, it is very, very frustrating because this is an issue that we know the majority of people in the country want to stop the change, but because we can't figure out which way to go, we do nothing.
Okay. Secretary will call the roll. Or, and in our case, we may do two things.
And the governor would choose.
The governor will decide. Secretary will call the roll.
Senator Gallegos.
No, ma'am.
Senator Hickey.
No.
Senator Engel. Senator Maestas.
No.
Senator McKenna.
Yes.
Senator Schmides. Senator Cedillo Lopez.
Yes.
Senator Tallman.
Yes.
Senator Tizipino.
Yes.
Senator Engel. No. 4-4.
It's a 4-4 tie. So is there an alternative motion?
I make a motion for a no rec, a do pass with a no rec.
I'll
Who's to
second.
go next? Judiciary. That's where we sent the other one to. There's a secondary alternative motion for a no rec. Is there a second?
I did.
Seconded by Tallman. Secretary will call the roll.
Senator Gallegos. Senator Hickey.
Pass.
Senator Engel. Senator Maestas. Senator McKenna. Senator Schmides. Senator Cedillo Lopez.
Yes.
Senator Tallman.
Yes.
Senator Tizipino.
Go to Hickey next.
This is for voting for a no rec, is that correct? No.
Senator Tizipino.
Yes, and it's a 4-4
It's okay.
tie. Okay, so it's deadlocked.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, members of the committee. I'll let Senator Gonzales know.